Hello ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Jim Makes a Cartoon. I'm Jim and I'm making a Final Cut Pro title template, changing it up a little bit, working on Motion 5 this week on the template I use for my comments in this blog. In a previous episode, I discovered a little problem with my title template, and that is that if I have a longer or shorter comment and I need to stretch it out in Final Cut Pro, the animation gets a little weird. To kind of explain this, if you've never seen the comments pop up here, they look kind of like this. Now the grow and shrink animations at the beginning and end of this last about a quarter of a second each. A few videos back I got a particularly long comment, so the first thing I tried was stretching it out quite a bit. My first thought was to create a freeze frame. That is, when the comment was full-sized, it would stay there for a few extra seconds. The problem is that the way Final Cut Pro titles work, if you increase the length of time of anything in your title, everything gets increased. So even though technically I was pausing the footage, Final Cut Pro interpreted it as I wanted to stretch everything out. So the grow and shrink animations ended up being stretched out about 3 times as long and looking really jerky. I also found that if I have a short comment that I don't want to be up for as long, the animation portions are so short that the comment just seems to appear out of nowhere. And once again, the final result is very jerky and unsatisfying. So the first part of this video is me trying to create a whole new comment template, this time using behaviors. Now, what's a behavior? Those of you out there familiar with animation are probably familiar with the term keyframe. A keyframe more or less refers to a pose or a scene or something like that, a final frame that you want your animation to look like. If you've seen any of my blogs where I work with Anime Studio, at the bottom of the screen you'll notice me putting little dots into a section called the timeline. Those are the keyframes. That's me telling Anime Studio to move a part from one part of the screen to the next, or to make a certain section bigger or smaller. Think of a keyframe as a point A and a point B. For example, if Dictator Cat is holding his paw up at keyframe A, and I tell Anime Studio at keyframe B that I want his paw to be down, those two keyframes combined are basically giving the software instructions to move the paw to that position. Motion 5 works on the same principle. You can put keyframes into your animations, so in this case the comment would grow or shrink based on the different point A's and point B's that I put into its timeline. The difference between keyframes and behaviors is that behaviors actually allow you to input values into little boxes. So for example, if I want the text to grow and shrink, as we were talking about earlier, I can apply the behavior of grow or shrink to the text. I can put in values like over what period of time I want the grow or shrink to happen, what speed, what percentage I want, like do I want it to be 110% bigger or 75% bigger, and so forth. And so you can add all kinds of these behaviors to objects in Motion. Now the reason you might want to do that instead of keyframing is that behaviors oftentimes can be a little bit easier and more flexible. So for example, if I wanted to adjust the grow or shrink animation with keyframes, I would literally have to move every single keyframe I've used. So if we're assuming I'm using 5 keyframes for the grow animation, I then have to move every single one of them to make any kind of adjustment. A behavior, I can just input a number into one of the text boxes and everything adjusts automatically. Now, a great feature of Motion 5 is you can export just about any behavior along with the title sequence directly into Final Cut Pro. So if we needed to lengthen a title, I could simply go into Final Cut Pro as I'm putting it in there and maybe make the sequence last a little bit longer. I would do that using something like the hold frame behavior. The problem I ran into here though is that sometimes behaviors can interfere with each other. If you modify one behavior to the point where it overlaps with another, let's suppose the grow shrink behavior overlaps with the hold frame behavior, it can cause all kinds of weird problems and glitches and bumps. So after a few unsuccessful attempts at that, some of which you won't even see in this video, I scrapped that idea and searched around the internet a little bit. And I ended up finding a really great tutorial with a pretty simple fix to this. As it turns out, I'm not the only person to deal with this issue of the animation being a little bit off if you want to make a modification in Final Cut Pro. So as it turns out, there are things called markers that you can put into your timeline in Motion. Now, I already knew about markers, but I didn't know they could be used in this specific way. What you can do, and if you own Motion 5, feel free to try this on your own projects. You can put markers at just the right spot, like just after an animation or just before an animation, and set it to ease in or ease out as optional. Now, what this ends up doing is it locks in the initial keyframes that you've put in. So in my case, like I said, I have a 1/4 of a second at the beginning where the comment grows, a 1/4 of a second at the end where the comment shrinks. By setting these ease in optional and ease out optional commands, I'm essentially telling Final Cut Pro, these sections of this title are off limits. You can't edit this, or at the very least, you can't shrink or expand the animation on it. So if I have a really long comment, if I stretch it out, it only stretches out the part where everything's holding still, thus eliminating that jerky, weird animation I was telling you about earlier. I know I've gotten into a lot of technical speak right now, and I apologize if you're not that immersed in animation or animation software. I was just really excited to learn about this. I know it seems like a little thing to get excited about, but I'm sure you could also probably tell me something interesting or kind of hidden in some piece of software you use that you didn't know about that just got you super happy and excited that you knew about it. In fact, please tell me about it. What's a piece of software or some other tool you use in your life where you discovered a little secret that was hidden in the background that really helped you out and got you really excited? Speaking of comments, I recently received one from Mars TV by Nikki Bass asking, where are your views? To be completely transparent, that's pretty much my fault. I spent probably the first 2 years developing this channel without really telling anybody about it. This was a combination of a couple of factors. What I told myself was that, hey, if I'm actually talented in any capacity, that talent will speak for itself, and I shouldn't have to constantly promote and spam people's Facebook walls and stuff like that. But the reality was, I was just incredibly insecure. I still kind of am a little bit. I think anybody who produces any kind of artistic content will tell you that there is a big fear that your work will be rejected by people. So yeah, I didn't really do any kind of promotion. I didn't talk about it with my coworkers. I would maybe post a video on Facebook once in a while, but I didn't bother tagging anything, didn't put any thought into thumbnails or anything like that. When I finally started telling people I knew about the content I was making, it was actually because I got caught making it. My boss walked in on me creating a cartoon during my lunch break, and he told a few people about it, who then later asked to watch it, and it turned out to not be a big deal. And after the word kind of spread and a lot of people at work had seen some of the cartoons, one of my coworkers told me that, hey, you don't really have to worry about us rejecting what you make. Even if we don't like it, we're not gonna be rude about it. We'll be constructive about it. We're your friends. And that's really why I wanted to bring up this comment, because I feel like it's been a while since I've talked about any kind of learning experience. And those of you who have been around for a while know that that's been a theme here for a long time. I feel it's very important that we share the things we've learned with each other. Partly so we can avoid each other's mistakes, and partly so that we can all be a little bit vulnerable and realize that when we do make a mistake, that's okay. In my case, my mistake was letting fears and pride prevent me from getting out there and showing people my stuff. I've paid a long-term price for that, but I'm really working to correct it now. When people ask me what's new with me now, I don't just say nothing anymore. I say, oh, I worked on a new cartoon. I put time and thought into my thumbnails and tags so that people can actually search for the videos. So that goes for everyone out there who wants to create something. Don't be afraid to promote, and don't be afraid of criticism. The people whose opinions really matter will give you real feedback. And the people who want to hate on your content, they never really had anything valuable to say in the first place, good or bad. On that note, that wraps everything up for this week. Thanks again so much for watching. As always, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this like a thing you might share. Still working on the sign-off thing. I'll see all of you amazing people next Friday.
Bye.